Welcome to the Chit Chat tonight, folks. Bear with us as we hit go live on the Instagram. And while we're waiting for everything to go live, welcome. We are continuing our adulting series, and today we'll be talking about success, and Instagram's all good to go. And boom, we are live everywhere. Welcome tonight. I'm your host, Maddie. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm Caitlin. Thanks for having me. Glad I get to be on a young adults podcast still.
Thank you so much for joining us. So to start off with, just as we always brief, like, what does success mean to you?
I think I was in school for a long time, so I love a good grade as much as the next person, probably significantly more. And so it's really easy to say that like that's what success is like getting that A or that star. But I think as I've gotten older, success is often going to be variable from day to day, and sometimes it's just doing what you can. Like it's accomplishing what can be done, trying your best to do some good.
I definitely relate to that a whole lot. If you don't know, I am a neuroscience pre-med. So you can imagine how much like grades and like classwork and stuff means to me, and like working towards that, because like my version of success is to become a doctor because I want to be a psychiatrist. But that's like it. What I've learned is everyone has a different viewpoint on success. Some people, their goal in life is to have a family, have kids. Some people, they want to become wealthy and rich. I think it just, success is just one of those terms that is not set in stone, is what you make it. You're the one who decides what goals you want each day and what to do. So I think it's definitely a very variable term and depends on each person.
Sure.
But in the context of like Christianity and stuff, what does success and faith look like to you? Like being successful as a Christian?
Not to get too theological, but there's this idea in liberation theology called the hermeneutic circle, which I'm sure Justin will be pleased I'm sharing live. But basically, the idea is that your faith, your practice, your Christianity is an ongoing process. You take what you've experienced, you you take the text, you apply it, you put all of those things together, and then you continue to see what like capital T truth is going to be tomorrow, and what being good and doing good looks like tomorrow. So I think success, again, the older I've gotten, is a little bit more of a gray area than it used to be as far as like what it means like to be a successful Christian or to have success in your faith. But ultimately, I think it is trying to always get closer to an understanding of this big and impossible to comprehend and all wonderful God.
I definitely agree that I love going deep in theology. So that's definitely a great point. I'm gonna wave physically at JJ. Thank you for waving at me. I just don't know how to wave back on Instagram. Someone waved at me from the Instagram. But yes, definitely if you're here, welcome to the Chit Chat. Definitely put any questions or comments you want, because we want the Chit Chat having a conversation with you as well as between two of us. But going back to what does success and faith look like, I think that success and faith is, like I said, each day coming a little bit closer to God. It's the idea of like our ultimate goal is to be like Jesus, which we all know we cannot ultimately be like that, but we have to accept that we are never going to be without mistakes. We're never going to be without sin. But every day work towards being closer to God, a little bit more like Him, a little bit more loving, a little bit away from temptation. And so that's being successful as a Christian. And so I guess some like hallmarks of that is just trying, if you meet someone who's you think has a great faith journey, is that mentality of I'm going to make mistakes, but I'm not going to run away from my mistakes. I'm not going to run away from God. Instead, I'm going to turn to God, having putting time aside for God each day. Like is also like a hallmark of someone who has a successful, I guess, faith.
Understanding that
And
it's a process.
yes, understanding the process for sure. Because something that I've once said is that you can't compare your season 1 of your faith journey to your to someone else's season 6. I think it's a lot of Christians struggle with that. I think a lot of Christians, especially in our technology age, they see someone else like posting all these great photos and stuff, but they don't those photos online, like on Instagram and Facebook, they don't show you the process how that person got there. They show you the hard times. They only show you the highlights of someone's life
Mm-hmm.
and the behind the scenes and the struggles. Because every day there's going to be some sort of struggle. No matter where you are in your faith journey, you're going to have a struggle. And I think that's a lot of times we don't talk about.
Sure.
We just think that once we follow God, everything's going to be okay. No, it's not. But it will be okay if you put your trust into Him and stuff. And I think, like, personally for me, like, I have on the back of my phone case the Bible verse, Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. I purposely got that because as a daily reminder, that it's all going to be okay. Because, like, something that's really I worry about is where am I going? Am I doing the right thing? Am I actually following God or am I following my own desires?
Sure.
And so there's a very, like, long answer to the question, but
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
that is not
my profession is talking, so you're all good. But it also
perfect.
is going to come into definitions of words, right? And so I think the definition of what okay is sort of crucial when it comes to that. Like, it's all going to be okay. That doesn't mean it's all going to be fun. That doesn't mean it's all going to be easy. It's going to mean that, and one of these questions that you were thinking about asking me is basically boils down to what is the nature of suffering and why does it happen? And I think there is a big difference between everything's going to be perfect because I believe in God and God is going to be with me every step of the way. But God heard his people crying out in slavery. He heard blood crying out from the sand and he reached out and he was there. God is with us. Alongside us throughout the brokenness and the complicated things. And I think that God works even very, very difficult and very painful situations toward your good, but that doesn't mean that it is good. It doesn't have, you don't have to justify suffering to find a way to move forward with meaning out of it.
Yeah. I like to think, like, when you're going through trials, is that there's always something to learn. There's always, first off, to trust God. That's the most important thing. But there's always some sort of lesson because we are not perfect, but we can be, like, more perfect through Christ. Like, we're kind of like gold. When gold's by its natural state, it's just there. It's kind of like a blob, right, in the ground. But in order to refine gold, you have to melt it down. You have to purify it. You have to shape it into what you want it to be. So I think it's one kind of the process of what happens with us through trials sometimes. Is trials do shape us, do change us, but are you gonna let it break you, or are you gonna let you be shaped into what God has intended for you? And sometimes it's painful. It hurts, but I believe there's always good in the bad. You're never just in the bad.
Yeah, I think it can be a temptation for many people to say everything happens for a reason, and I don't think that that comes from anything other than a desire to like make the best of the world. But I have known a lot of suffering. I work with people who have known immense suffering, more than many of us could ever imagine. And I think it's important to sort of come at the understanding that you can take something that is pain and you can find beauty there and you can grow from it, and that doesn't, you don't have to pretend that it wasn't painful. You don't have to say, oh well, it was all worth it. You can do your best to make it worth it, but like I think acknowledging pain is pain, suffering is suffering, and yet God is with you in that, and yet God can help you make um, some progress through that, learn something through that, grow in some way through that.
Yes, I think that's a beautiful way of putting it. All right, I'm gonna get to the verse today. So I think it somewhat goes with what we were saying. Is blessed is the one who does not walk in the step of the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yield its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers. Psalms 1 through 3. Right off the bat, that's how Psalms start off with. And I just like, when I found this verse, I was thinking how, like I said, we don't know what we have a purpose here on earth. And we know that because God created each and every one of us for that. And to be successful in God, we said, is to be more like Jesus, to be closer to God, and also to serve what His purpose is for us here on earth. And a lot of times we don't know what it is. We don't know when we're going to serve our purpose. No, when is that moment that God knew we were made for. I think that verse really simplifies that we must be ready, that we must constantly, we have to build a relationship on God so that when we do come the season, we're able to yield our fruits. We're able to prosper. We're able to be stand strong. So I think that was like what our version of success should look like, is
Yeah, I think
always
you'll
be
hear a
ready.
lot of actors in particular, just because of how their industry works, but they'll say that success is when preparation meets opportunity. And I do think that that rings true in what you're saying, which is that if you are putting yourself in a position, if you are readying yourself, if you are doing your best to be the kind of person you feel you're supposed to be, you think that God is calling you to be, then you are in place for whatever you are called to do.
100%. I think that's the best way to describe it, what that verse really is. And so, like, talking about how this person, how our life should be preparation when meets success, how do you think that God views success himself?
I think that God created us in God's own image, right? Like God looked at the universe, at the cosmos, and said, I want to create humans. And in the same breath as creating humans in God's own image, God also decided to let us have free will and make mistakes and make choices and have a have the option to follow God or not, right? To worship or not, to do what we are called to do or not. And so I think there is a tremendous trust that God demonstrates just by our very existence. And so I think God's view of success for people would be that we are recognizing the humanity in one another, and that we are witnessing and bearing witness to what is around us and who is around us, and that we are turning that attention back toward God.
Beautiful. I actually think that's like the best way of phrasing it, because we are really made. I think people forget that we are made in God's image. Like He purposely made us this way. We have our own free will, and we suffer the consequence of our actions. But ultimately, at the end of the day, everything that God has done has been love for us.
Mhm.
I mean, we see, if you read the Old Testament all the way into the New Testament, you see the little hints of Jesus. It was His plan all along. Even in Genesis, you're gonna see God had a vision, and He succeeded. He had success when Jesus rose that day from the grave. He won, and yet He still chooses us every single day. So
I think
beautiful.
God could make he could she could, however you want to define God, but like
Yes,
God could just make everything happen the way it was supposed to, and that's not what we see happening, which makes me I see that as evidence that God is with us on that process, and also sees that success as a sort of coming together and a joint venture, and not just getting things perfect.
100%. I mean, the thing about it like this way is God has chosen to limit His own power. If God really wanted to, He could fix anything like this. He could restart like this. But He loves us so much that He's decided to let us choose for ourselves, because He doesn't want us be forced into following Him. He wants us to choose to follow Him, because that's how much He loves us. So yeah, I definitely think our broken world is proof of the one true God, because if we can find beauty in it, if we can find God in it, then that's success. Like that is the ultimate goal. Um, but like when we are trying to deal with that, because like honestly, there's so many things that humans can choose to do. And a lot of times humans choose the wrong choice. But do you think that it's possible for to pursue both success as in like earthly success and God at the same time?
No, but that does not. I think it comes down to your definition. I'm a lawyer. I'm sorry. It comes here down to your definition of success. And so I would say, yeah, you can pursue success and God at the same time because your success is doing what God says. But no, right? The stereotypical success, money, power, popularity, those things have the potential to pull you away from God. Power corrupts, it can be misleading, it can be distracting. And it is difficult to keep your eyes where keep your eyes on the least of these, right? To make sure that you are paying attention to the people who are broken and who are hurting and who need you to be whoever it is that they need, while you are single-mindedly pursuing a particular goal. Like, there's a reason I don't work at a law firm, because I want to do the kind of work that I do, and that means I'm going to get paid less and I'm going to have a little bit less prestige. And that's a choice that I make because I think that that's a choice that God is calling me to make, in the service that I can give to my neighbor.
I think that's definitely a great response. For me, I guess it's just like it depends on where your priorities are at. I think your number one priority should always be God. And sometimes God's going to let us have success in our careers, but to glorify Him, not
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. But if your goal in life is, like I said, to work for others, serve others, and that's your version of success, that's alignment of what God's called us to do. He's called us to be servants. But if it what you're pursuing gets in the way of your relationship with God, pulls you away, or directly contradicts what the Bible tells us. I mean, there's a Bible verse where it's I forget where it is. I think it's in Matthew, where it's like you can't serve like a servant can't serve two masters. You can't serve both money and God. And a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people view success as money. And so if you're constantly chasing after money, then your focus is not going to be on God. And a lot of times you're going to hurt others on the way if your only goal is money. But I think it's possible for you to still make money as long as you know where your heart truly lies. Because like something that I mentioned, so we had a episode about money a couple weeks ago, and something that I heard at Passion 2026, which this is a young adult conference. Um, one of the speakers was said his name's like Cliff something. I always forget his last name. He said something that really stuck with me was do what you're good at, make a bunch of money, and then go feed hungry children. And so that phrase really stuck to me. I'm like, that's like I've never heard someone like a Christian leader be like, go make a bunch of money, but he goes, but do it to feed hungry children and then bring like help him that way and hopefully help plant the seeds in them of faith. So like I said, but I think his ultimate priority was to serve others and spread the gospel. So like I said, it just depends on where you're prioritizing your life and what you mean like
Yeah, I
success
mean,
for that.
a platform gives you access to ways to help. It just also gives you access to ways to move further away from other people. So having a really solid sense of that imago Dei, that image of God and other people, of their inherent worth and dignity, and being really connected, to what being a neighbor means, will help you to sort of keep the right things in focus even while you're doing. I want to be successful, I want to be a great lawyer, I want to win things, I want to get approvals, but I also want to do that in the service of helping my neighbor and honoring their inherent worth.
Yes, 100%. Um, but now moving on to the next question, which is kind of similar. So a little bit more focused on careers and everything. So what does it mean to walk humbly with God while pursuing a career? So a little bit more focus. You're gonna focus on more career-related success.
I think that it means to be open to where you are needed and not just to what feels good. And I think there can be a temptation, especially for people who are coming from positions of less power, women and minority demographics, where community is seen as more necessary to be the one who fills those roles. And there's also, of course, an obvious and necessary pushback to that. So I'm not saying necessarily volunteer to take all the notes or do plan all of the lunches, but you can do your work in such a way that your goal is your own glorification, or you can do your work in such a way that your goal is to make the best product, or that your goal is to uplift your coworkers, or that your goal is to make sure that your ultimately avoiding some sort of catastrophe, right? Like there are ways to keep your focus even when what you're doing might be a corporate daily work, but you can do that in such a way that other people feel loved and that other people feel valued, and that things are being changed in for the better, and not that you're just like walking into and playing and continuing systems just because they are. Like if you're coming into the workplace, and if you're coming into your job, into whatever you're doing with intentionality, you can make lots of little choices all the way along that will ultimately really shift where you end up and what you accomplish.
Definitely. Something that I thought about the question earlier, but I completely lost my train of thought, was you don't have to be successful in God alone. Make sure you have your community around you of people who are going to support you through this, because, like I said, you're not always going to be successful. You're going to suffer. There's going to be failings. But make sure you have the people around you who are going to uplift you, but who are also going to call you out if they see you drifting away from God. They're going to be the people who are going to pull you back. So I think that's something like a lot of people forget about success. They think it's all about like they're the only ones who can make their own success, right? Single, very individualistic, like single minded, but that's not the case. We are meant to be in community with each other. Humans are designed to be interdependent. And something that our society has lost is that value of interdependence and community. So when you are in pursuing success, but make sure you surround yourself who are people who are going to remind you that God is the ultimate goal, that your faith is more important. So that's my advice for when pursuing a career, but also just like also setting limits. Sorry, my mom's calling me. Go away. Um, you also got to remember like boundaries in the workforce. Like, obviously, if you want to be successful, you're gonna work hard. You're gonna put all these hours in, but you have to remember: are you putting the same hours into your faith? Are you growing your faith, or are you letting it start because you're putting all your time and energy into other pursuits? So I think it's something you have to constantly be questioning: is is your energy going?
I think
Um,
it's also important to try to ensure that you aren't just trying to get a good grade and being Christian, right? I think it's very easy, particularly for highly motivated people, to feel this sense of I have to be good enough in every part of their life. And the wonderful thing about God, the wonderful thing about this miraculous relationship we have, is that you are good enough, right? You have God's image in you as you are. And that doesn't mean that we don't try really hard to do what's right and to be better. But it does mean that it's not necessarily about memorizing all of the things or saying the exact right comforting phrase when someone needs it, or singing the hymns perfectly, or whatever the expression of faith feels like to you, but that also you are worthwhile and you have value as you are, and that is ultimately what is asked of you is to be God's child.
yes, 100%. So I mean, like a lot of Bible verses about this, about how like God gives us the gifts we need. He gives us what we need to do for what He has planned for us. But also, he has made us have shortcomings. Like, we're not perfect. Like, I can't sing and save my life. I know that. I know I'm not going to be leading the worship team in faith, but I know that there's other ways for me to be a successful member of the church in the back, do other stuff and be a servant and stuff like that. So I think it's also like accepting that God has made you perfectly the way you are, and that you don't have to forget perfect everything is. Something that's so hard is because you're very
I'm losing my lights. I'm so sorry. Hold on.
you're good. It's okay.
Apparently, it's a motion sensor. Didn't know that.
Oh, well, that's fun. um, but yeah, okay. So we are getting closer to looks like our 7:30 ending. So there's 80 prayer concerns in the chat. Please put them in. Um, we're gonna go for a couple more questions, depending on how long this one takes. I got a really long question,
Okay.
but so a lot like when I was doing a lot of research into this, and like some of it, like I talked like about a lot of the money and success one kind of cover each other, but like this is something that a lot of people have a view of Christianity because of this, because it's kind of been very controversial. Like a lot, it's been in the like mainstream media. Like when I mentioned to my roommate about the money topic a couple weeks ago, she actually showed me videos of pastors who believe in the prosperity gospel, which is a doctrine that like the basically that the believers believe that if you believe in God, He's automatically going to grant you wealth and good health, and that like the like basically the stronger your faith is, the stronger the blessings kind of situation, and that like if you have an illness or you're poor, like that's a curse by God because you don't have enough faith or something like that. Obviously you see why it's controversial, but do you think that this is a dangerous doctrine to follow, or if there's actually some truth to this belief?
I absolutely think it's a dangerous belief. There is a lot of harm that can be done by making sickness, by making poverty, personal moral failing, by looking at someone else. There's a saying that I won't quote it exactly right, but the idea is that there is nothing harder to comprehend than someone else's pain, and nothing easier to understand than your own, because it is this thing that is so very real to you and so very ephemeral to everyone around you, and vice versa. And if you look at the Bible, you see suffering, and you see good people suffering. You see Jesus, sure, taking on our sins, but also doing exactly what God asked Jesus to do. And you have everyone knows someone in their life, and it's so easy to try to regain a sense of control around what is the ultimate problem of suffering. Things are hard, they're scary, everything's on fire right now. And it is tempting to want to be able to say, well, if I just do the right things, the bad things won't happen to me, right? Like that is fundamentally a way of trying to keep yourself in control. But that's not how the world works. Bad things happen to good people, and God is with those good people in the midst of those bad things. And that it is not, it is very dangerous to make other people feel as if they're responsible for everything horrible in the world. And it is also very dangerous when you actually acknowledge and realize that that's not how that works for you either. My mom got really sick. She was one of the best people I've ever known, right? Like, she should be at my wedding. She's not gone because I'm a bad person. She's not unable to be with me because I have done something evil. It's not an ancestral curse. It just is a thing that happens. People die. People are taken too soon. Children. Um, People suffer for all sorts of reasons, and sometimes people are, martyred, and other times people are just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And that if we make that about the choices that they made entirely to get there, then you are basically sacrificing someone else's humanity and someone else's full, like, complex internal existence so that you can have an easy answer and be like, well, at least I can make sure that that doesn't happen to me because I'm going to do the right thing this time. Or, and if bad things happen to you, it must be some failing on your part, which just encourages us not to really try to make the world a better place, right? If everything is about, well, God decreed this and it's because of some thought you had in your past, then you aren't inclined to try to fix broken systems or to help people up or to do whatever that next right step is. So I think that sense of desiring to control is very, very, very natural and also very, 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 very dangerous for you and for everyone you come into contact with.
I 100% agree with that. But sometimes I think the best lies have a little kernel of truth. It's true. God will bless us. As if He has said He will, like the evildoers will suffer, but like not now. Like it doesn't have to be now in our lifetime. A lot of those big claims, like about the blessings and stuff, those are promises that we know we will have in the future. We don't know when it's going to happen. But a lot of the end time prophecies are what people use, quote this, it's like that. But also, like, when you say that if I have enough faith in God, He will bless me for this amount, you're basically putting God in a box. You're basically just saying God's a genie, right? Like if
Yeah.
I do, it's like you're very transactional faith. Like if I do this, then I will get this. That's not how God works at all. God's sovereign. God's all power, omniscient. He is, was, and will be. Like there is no inner beginning of God. And so when people believe that, oh, if I have enough faith, then everything's gonna work out right the way I want it to be. No. When has anything ever worked out the way that the people wanted in the Bible? But so most of those people had other plans. I mean, look at what's his name, the guy in the fish. um,
Jonah.
uh, Jonah. Jonah the fish. Dude ran. Dude ran and got swallowed by a giant fish, for the record. But that was definitely not his plans. But look what God turned around to His glory. And he hated the people, actually. He prophesied to, for the record. He prayed for their destruction, yet God was able to save the entire city. So, and again, it's not about like how much faith you have in God to get what you want. I mean, I like to think of the Book of Job. I think a lot of people get the idea from the Book of Job because, like, yeah, it's like oh, Job had enough faith, to get the reward and he got everything like tenfold. That's I think when people think that they are missing the point of Job, because Job was this great man. He had amazing faith in God, and God did bless him, gave him blessings. And Satan comes along and is like, "Hey God, I bet he won't have faith in you if you take away all his blessings." And Satan destroys his life completely. And you see that for like 30 chapters, him and his friends have this conversation because they believe in that transactional faith. They believe that if you do good, then you're going to receive good, but that's not the case at all. In fact, when God comes to Job, he tells him, like, he asks him a bunch, I think it was like, I forget how many questions, but like a series of unanswered questions that at the time no one could have answered. I think they've only answered 4 of those questions since then. A lot of things that only a sovereign God would know, and that's how God tells his sovereignty to us in that dialogue with Job. And so when you think that, oh, this happened to me because I wasn't faithful in God, that's not the case. Some things, bad things just happen. We don't know why. We don't know why suffering's in the world. But like we said earlier, suffering can lead to growth. So, this will be our last question. So, if there's any last minute prayer concerns or comments or questions, please put them in now. We are running a little late. But quick question: what are some steps we can take this week to be more successful in our faith journey?
I think it is worthwhile to take a step away, to take a step back, to take a breath. We are bombarded all the time with information and news and technology and homework and everything else that comes into play, and it is just helpful. It is nice to take a moment to really consider not just what somebody told you God wants for you, but to really stop and acknowledge like what you think you are being called to do, what you feel you are good at, what you feel you could improve in, those ways that you can refocus and recenter yourself. I think it's always helpful to take a second, to take that breath, and to sort of put yourself into the right mindset as you sort of go through, as opposed to just letting yourself be carried along by the current.
That's definitely a great step. I like to think of like, because I think when we talk about how success and faith is be like Jesus, and we know that Jesus took a lot of breaks from the world. He would go by himself into wilderness and just pray and spend time with God. And think like not only was he building a relationship with God, make sure he was in line with what God wanted him to do, but also, like I said, it was a way for him to like mentally rest too. So we're constantly it's this one thing after another because we have these little great devices right here that constantly keep us updated, constantly drawing our attention away, stuff like that. But when we choose to pump down, choose to just give ourselves a break, like that's amazing. Like a pastor in the church I've been attending here in Philly has once told like in a sermon was the it was based on a survey I think that the thing that people need the most in their spiritual life was a nap. Jay just needed some time. And he goes, you don't know how many people come to me who are having spiritual problems, and I feel it's the first thing I ask them are you eating right and are you sleeping enough and drinking enough water? And he goes, most of the time the people who are very overwhelmed are like, no, I've not been eating enough, I haven't been sleeping well. He goes, okay, first give yourself some rest and a break and some food, and then see if you still feel the way, basically. And I think that's like a great way to approach the problem. It was like sometimes when you're feeling overwhelmed, it's because you're not taking care of yourself, because your body will know when it needs a break. And I think we get this mindset that we have to be productive all the time. And really, it's not. That's not the case at all. That's not natural. I'm getting another phone call. I'm popular today. It looks like. I told my friend we'll go eat after this. Um, but
But I agree. I think
yeah,
we are physical beings who exist in physical space, and God wants us to. God wants us to be in community with one another. You're not just if God wanted a bunch of perfect little spiritual minions, God would have created that. But instead, we have us, and so you need to give yourself the grace to be human, and also explore the fullness of what humanity can mean.
yeah. I think I just read this recently. I'm reading a book for social. I'm in a writing seminar about social justice. But the one of the things like they said in like the book, because we just finished it, that really stuck out to me, is that we need to think of our lives kind of like the seasons. Like we have fall, which is like we're reaping the harvest, like you're getting the fruits of your labor. Winter, a time of where you're resting, time to work on yourself, a time of um like spiritual growth. Spring, time for seeds to start growing, time season of growth and stuff like that. And in the summer is that productive phase where all this stuff is happening. But I feel like we think that we need to be in that summer all the time. But really there's 3 other seasons to get to the summer. And I think we don't a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to go for those seasons, and it leads to burnout, leads to feelings of anxiety, overwhelming. But God created the seasons for a reason. And so we need to go through the seasons of our life too, like that. And it's different for everyone, like when you go through. So some winters are going to be really long. Some summers are going to be really long, but you can't compare, like I said earlier, you can't compare your season 1 of Faith during someone else's season 6. Because they probably have gone through many cycles. But
Sure.
yeah, I think that's definitely my advice. And also just, if you just schedule little moments of God. When things are getting super busy, make sure you have those little things every day, help keep you grounded. My only piece of advice on that. We are definitely a little behind, but would you like to play us out today? Because I don't have any prayer concerns on my end.
Yeah, there aren't any on mine, so I'm happy to pray. Sure.
Okay, perfect.
Father God of all creation, of all of the beauty that we see, we know that you are with us in the good and the bad. We know that you walk alongside us. through the suffering, through the seasons of pain and sorrow, and also through the rejoicing, through those seasons when everything is beautiful and we are reminded what our purpose is here. We ask that you would be with us as we look for you in the faces of our neighbors, and that you would guide us and tell us when to rest, tell us when to move. Let us act as your hands and feet in this world. In your name we pray. Amen.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Sorry. As soon as my friend came in the room, like, I started. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Next week will be the last day of our adulting series. We're going to end off on relationships in honor of Valentine's Day. So stay tuned for that. I hope everyone has a great week. And remember that everyone's success is different. And I hope you find out your success in God. So, bye, everybody.